does that saying go? That one sound bite that Austin be putting at the top of the videos, it'd be like Jackson State this and Jackson State that. That was the case, even though the Tigers are off last week. They didn't play a game, they were off, and yet they were still the topic of conversation in some circles. Let's talk about it, how it's still JSU versus the coalition. We'll talk about it after the bumper. Stay tuned. What is going on, everybody? What is going on, everybody? My name is JeffLightsYJr. This is the Victory Formation Sports Show right here on JeffLightsYJr, YouTube, Facebook, wherever you get your content. Do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button, like, share, subscribe, and notification bell because we upload all the time. Now, like I said, there's that video, that infamous video, that famous video. I call it infamous, the famous video of the guy saying Jackson State this and Jackson State that, because JSU always seems to be the topic of conversation, whether they're playing or not. Last week, they didn't play, right? Like, they didn't have a game. They sitting pretty atop of the SWAC, sitting pretty as the defending reigning SWAC champions, HBCU national champions, Cricket Bowl celebration champions. You know, you name it, they're doing it off their impressive win against who I believe is the second best team in HBCU football, Alabama State. North Carolina Central has something to say about that, but nonetheless, Alabama State is who I believe is the second best team in HBCU football. Nonetheless, they didn't play, but they were still the topic of conversation, all because a publication, HBCU Sports, shout out to HBCUsports.com, decided to pay them a compliment, which is okay, because once again, they are the reigning defending SWAC champions, the reigning defending Cricket Celebration Bowl champions, and they haven't lost a SWAC game in 2 years. Nonetheless, the SWAC game that counted anyway. Y'all get what I'm saying. Nonetheless, it started a conversation that took place last week that I think will be a topic of conversation moving forward the rest of the season. So HBCUsports.com, shout out to those guys, Ken Rashad and those guys. It said Jackson State is likely destined for another SWAC championship and Celebration Bowl run. However, that doesn't mean the program doesn't consider how they stack up against the best of the FCS. So, this was the story that I don't even know who from HBCU Sports wrote it, because I didn't click it, because that's not the topic of the conversation. They were just posing they were posing the question: how would Jackson State fare, because they're so good? How would they fare if they played in the FCS playoffs as opposed to playing in the Celebration Bowl, as opposed to making all the money playing the Celebration Bowl? Just a hypothetical thing, because they know the ultimate goal is to win the Celebration Bowl. The ultimate goal is not to play in the FCS playoffs. You lose money playing in that, as opposed to winning and garnering a ton of money playing in the Celebration Bowl. Nonetheless, that didn't stop the conversation, because Dave, and I've seen Dave online, and Dave is good, and I'm not mad at Dave. It just was funny. Dave said, too bad they don't schedule to show it. I think they're a top 15 FCS team. That is a compliment. But their scheduling doesn't show the data to support it. You have 4 games to do so now. And this is where things kind of got out of control. And this is Paris. Shout out to Paris. Paris has been on these videos, as you might even see her on this comment. Paris says, because of who we are, we don't have to schedule for money like some of y'all do. So what Paris is referring to is a ton of, and shout out to Dave, because I think I follow Dave, a ton of Black colleges take money games. Essentially, they take games that they go play Michigan State, right? Get $750,000 to travel to Lansing, Michigan. In a lot of cases, get their heads beat in, right? But you get that $750,000 for your budget. A lot of schools add that, like they have that predetermined in their budget. Michigan State and Washington States and Oregon's and Miami's, and Bethune played Miami earlier this year. Last year, Miami hung 70 on them. This year, they beat them in again. Like you add that to the budget. You add an ass whooping to your schedule, because you can get that $500,000, that $700,000, sometimes $1 million, right? Like depending on how important they feel like you are to their schedule and having you on their schedule. And she says, we schedule teams that make monetary sense for us, and y'all still try to talk bleep about it anyways. So it doesn't matter. And she's right. So Jackson State, in some of their non-conference games, they scheduled Southern Miss. They lost, but they scheduled Southern Miss. But that was a game that was competitive, right? That was a game that's not Michigan State. That's not Miami. That's not, Oregon or something. That's a Southern Miss. That's in Mississippi. It's not a far travel, so the cost isn't great. And you have a legitimate shot at beating them. Right? Jackson State had a legit shot at beating Southern Miss. Jackson State also scheduled non-conference Hampton, right? People are going to come to the Hampton game. You're going to sell tickets. That's an HBCU. People want to see that. It was competitive. It was good. It was a good product, both for TV and for your players. It was a confidence booster, right? On both sides, because you played a hard-fought competitive game. Hampton players left that game thinking they should have won. Jackson State walked away with the win. And this, once again, started a ton of conversation because Dave didn't back down. Shout out to Dave. He held his ground. Let me go ahead. Stop sharing my screen. My bad about that, y'all. But Dave held his ground. Dave was like, no, like that's not what I want to say. And if I'm not mistaken, somebody correct me in the chat if I'm wrong. Dave went to North Carolina A&T, if I'm not mistaken. I think I can just click on Dave's page. It'll probably tell me. Yeah, NCAT. Yeah, so he went to North Carolina A&T. So North Carolina A&T, let me finish this and then I'll get to my point. Dave goes on to say, the goal is for y'all to win the Celebration Bowl and don't have interest in the FCS playoffs. And that's absolutely fine. JSU schedules money games just like everybody else. Y'all played one in the last 2 years. And he made a threat. And I like this. This is why I saved it, because I wanted to have this conversation. It says the last 2 FCS PWIs y'all played was Campbell in 2022 and South Alabama in 2019. Got to schedule better if you want the perception of the conference to change. And that's not just JSU. That's everybody. So kudos to Dave, because he wasn't calling out JSU, even though he was specifically JSU in this one, but he wasn't just saying just them. He was saying the perception of the conference. And he goes on to say, but if you don't care, just keep it moving, business as usual. And I disagree with Dave here. The reason why I disagree with Dave here, and I appreciate Dave for having this perspective. This is his, it was his tweet. It was his post. He was the one that made it, and he stood 10 toes down behind it. And that's what I appreciated. But I disagree with Dave because what perception are you going for? Right? Like he is an NCAT alum, right? NCAT left for the CAA. Now, since they left for the CAA, they have been getting their heads beat in. Now, before they left for the CAA, NCAT dominated HBCU football. Like, NCAT was the bleep. I think they won 4 out of the 5 Celebration Bowls. Like 4 of the first 5 Celebration Bowls that were ever played, North Carolina A&T won. Right? I think they won 3 in a row, and 4 out of 5, the first 5 that were played before they eventually moved on to the CAA. And Dave, I think, like a lot of A&T alums, have this, I don't want to speak for Dave. I don't know. I don't, but I just from the outside looking in, it looks like they have this kind of like, I don't know, animosity towards the success Jackson State is having in this era, where social media is bigger, where there's more recognition, there's more eyeballs in the space, there's more content creators like myself, Off Script, Architect, a bunch of Kobe, a bunch of guys, a bunch of people in here in this space, HBCU Nightly, like that wasn't there when they had their dominant run, when they were sending guys to the NFL, where they were dominating winning Celebration Bowls, and it almost feels like you missed out, and the only way to kind of get in there is to lash out. Right? I don't want to speak for Dave, but it's just kind of what it seems like, because if you were still in this space, you wouldn't care about who you're scheduling and care about the perception of the conference and all that stuff. You'd just be caring about racking up trophies, winning rings, putting, BTA, belt to bleep. You know what I mean? But now, and you love your rankings. Like Jackson State, I think currently is ranked 13 in the entire country. Who cares about what the conference perception is? They're 13th in the country with the way that they schedule. And they're the reigning defending national champs, HBCU national champs. Now, my guy, he says Guthrie Stylist, right? And my man DJ, he had something to say about that because he's a Jackson State alum. He always going to defend the Tigers. DJ goes on to say Jackson State is ranked 13th in the nation. A fan of a school that has won 3 games in 3 calendar years is giving Jackson State advice on how we can improve our perception as a program. The delusion is clinical. And I just thought that was funny. Of course, my girl Timona, she loves D, goes on to say, like, why does he have it figured out for Jackson State, but not for his own school? And see, they're being funny. I mean, they're actually being serious, but it is funny. But the problem is I think NCAT alums, because they were so dominant, and I don't want to speak for Dave, but I've seen in other NCAT alums take this type of perception and some of them, not all, I'm not even saying this is Dave, have this sort of animosity towards Jackson State because they missed out on this. Like, this is a lot more fun than when it was when they were winning championships. Like, as far as the perception nationally, you've got obviously Deion Sanders came and went, Eddie George came and went. Now you currently got Michael Vick and Deshaun Jackson and TC Taylor, and these guys are dominating, winning games. Not necessarily Michael Vick, but I'm saying like there's a lot more eyeballs and a lot more people talking about these games, a lot more people covering these games, a lot more people going to these games, a lot more people blasting these games out via social media, whether it's YouTube, Facebook, X, whatever. And that wasn't the case when North Carolina A&T was dominating the space, unlike anyone has before or has yet since to do. Now, Jackson State is starting to create something like that now, but they haven't reached the heights that North Carolina A&T did when the Celebration Bowl was first created in its infancy. And I think they have like some resentment, some FOMO for the fact that, dang, when we were dominating, nobody talked about us like this. When we were dominating, nobody covered us like this. When we were dominating, nobody was speaking this highly of us and was showing us this much love. And there wasn't this many platforms. There was no HBCU Go when North Carolina A&T was dominating that covered all these games, that had games on national television. There wasn't, ESPN wasn't picking up as many games as they are now. There was no HBCU Sports Plus that had these different channels. There was no off script. He wasn't in this space. There was no Jeff Lightsy Jr. There was no HBCU Nightly. There was no Blitz City podcast. These things didn't exist. And I do feel like if North Carolina A&T came back to the MEAC or came back to the HBCU space, that they would be a lot more successful. You can't be worse than what they are now. Let's be honest. You can't be worse than what they've been over the course of the last 3 years. You just saw what Timona put. They won 3 games in 3 years. You can't be any worse than that. And so now that not only did they not get covered the way that Jackson State and others are being covered now, they're actually really bad in that space. They left this space and went to that space, and this space got popping way more than that. I can promise you the SWAC, the MEAC, has way more attention, way more eyeballs, and gets way more coverage than the CAA. It just does, at least in the black space, right? At least in the spaces that matter to the people that matter. HBCU Nightly isn't talking about the CAA. They may talk about A&T, maybe, but they're not very good. They may talk about Hampton, maybe, but they're not very good in those spaces. But in this space, in the SWAC and the MEAC space, it's popping right now. It's lit. It is lit. We have fun all the time. My live chats be booming. My comments section is booming. Twitter be booming. And it just wasn't that case when his school was dominating. I think there's a little bit of FOMO there. I think not just by Dave, but by a ton of people from Hampton or NCAT or whoever that has a little bit of FOMO. And Jackson State is turning into what NCAT was during those times when nobody was paying attention as much as they are now. And Jackson State is now getting all that attention because they have collectives and channels that cover them, whether it's Doc Holliday or KC 1400 or Timona or whoever. She Loves D. My bad. Sorry, Timona. She Loves D. And Dave and other NCAT alum are probably trying to feel like oh, it should have been us. Like, we won 4 of them things. Jackson State has 1. They have 1. We have 4. I just think there's a little bit of FOMO there. I think there's a little bit of FOMO there. Is that, oh, the perception of the conference, teams got to play better, whatever. Yeah, I'm not saying that that's wrong. I'm not saying that the SWAC schools, you want to match up better against your CAA brethren, your other FCS brethren. But at the same time, man, like, sometimes you just enjoy your sacred space. Sometimes I don't need to go mainstream. Sometimes I like being underground and rocking with the people that's rocking me from the beginning and continue to build up this space. That way, at some point, eventually, I will be able to go out and compete and beat those teams too. I don't know. You guys let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. You guys let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Once again, I titled this Jackson State versus the Coalition because there were other comments in there that were agreeing with Dave. And Dave is perfectly fine to have his own opinion. But it's just funny how now that Jackson State gets his coverage, now that Jackson State gets his attention, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, because Scotty's on the total opposite. Scotty talks bad about Jackson State in their fans. He all the time. He dances on the graves when they lose. And you need that too, though. That's the other part of this coin. You need people like him too, because he is a different beacon for the space that is good overall. Overall, it's good. Jackson State might not like it, but it's good overall. As someone who works in media, people like him are needed. You need him. You do. That's what makes it bigger. I think SWAC is more noticeable and more talked about because there's an off-script page. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Jackson State versus the Coalition once again, and I love every bit of it. My name is JeffLightsYJr. This is the Victory Formation Sports Show right here on JeffLightsYJr, YouTube, Facebook, wherever you get content. Do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button before you get out of here. Like, share, and subscribe in the notification bell because I upload all the time. And thank you guys for tuning in. As always, I'll see you next time. Peace.